Hey there everybody, this is Caitlin here and welcome to another feature match for you guys today. In particular today we are actually playing it's kind of like a funny game of sorts, so I'll explain it why. I'm on the right hand side with the Sylvia map playing the new Pricia Beastmaster, and my friend Cammy is on the left hand side with his Reflect Frame map playing the Guardian of Lightstones. So we're rolling here to see who goes first. Cammy gets the high roll and he decides to go first, so I get my Energize. Now the reason why these games in particular is quite funny is that we've recently built these decks. This was actually the very first time I played my Pricia deck, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to record it so that I can see what mistakes I make so I can improve for next time, because obviously I want to be able to remember what I do wrong, and you know, I'm not too happy with my first hand there, but in particular we both made a couple of mistakes. So I several times during these games forgot to tap Pricia for a stone, as silly as I was. And then on the other side, Cammy in particular forgot about his Dragon's Resonance ability. So his first play here is to tap for a stone and play Leviton. But his Resonance with his Dragon is that he can give any of his target Resonators, I believe it's 200 until end of turn. But unfortunately, both of us forgot that the Dragon even had that in the first place. So in all these games here, we all forget about the Resonance ability. So in my turn, I've tapped for stone, I've placed a Death Scythe and played a Sacred Elf in order to get a little bit of will ready for next turns. He chases his draws pretty much every single time with tapping Leviton in order to potentially give the dragon an extra 200 damage until end of turn in case he judgments early. He's paying 2 to put down a chance standby and contemplating where he's going to stick it there. I recover my ruler and my stone, and I tap for a stone. The resonance hits and the flying goes to the Sacred Elf, even though I will not be tapping it to attack, because obviously I want to keep it up potentially to play spells and whatnot, and to like tap it for will and everything like that. So I'm thinking about it. The idea with my deck is that I like to try and get a Spinning Myths off as early as possible with Torrent to ramp for stones. So here I am tapping 2, tapping 1 green stone and 1 for my elf to play Windscale Refuge to draw. Now in particular my myths, I have a couple obviously you saw in my deck profile last week. I have Izanagi and I have the Ox King. I tap 1 for Tama to draw. Izanagi is preferable when my opponent has a bigger field, or at least has 3 items, including Regalia, that I can take in order to buff Izanagi up. Otherwise, it's not really that beneficial. Otherwise, I would put an Ox King, but I believe at the moment I only have Izanagi. I do not have Ox King in my hand, so I prefer to wait just a bit to see if Cammy plays anything else, because Izanagi can't touch the chance standby, unfortunately, so he just calls a stone, and that's all he does there. He's got quite a bit of decent will open, so he can counter to anything that I play, because I believe he has quite a couple of light not counter spells, but responses to me doing things. So I tap for stone. It's Blasting Waves. I believe I give the flying and the swiftness to the Tama, because the idea of like a flying cat is quite terrifying, even though Tama only has 200 attack here. But you know what, I don't want the resonance ability to go to waste. Who knows, maybe flying will be very important, even though he's not got anything on the field. Just budge my little cards up there to make a little bit more room. Contemplating which stones here to tap, because it is kind of important, but I tap the 1 wind stone to play Tama, another one in particular, and draw a card. So now my field is just like a little field of 2 Tamas and a Sacred Elf. Not really got any chance to play any big myths as of yet. So in particular, I'd say that in this kind of first cautious game, it was quite a slow one. So I hit with the Tama for 2, Cammy doesn't have anything, so he takes the 200 damage and I pass the turn there. Obviously he responds to the draw by tapping his Leviton and recovers everything. He taps for a stone. So I think he is waiting for me to try and build up a bigger board presence so that when he judgments, he can obviously wipe my board quite heavily. So he plays Lumia's Judgment to kill my Tama because it's rested. I decide, no, I'm going to Windscale Refuge it, protect it. Lumia's Judgment in particular has Remnant, which I actually forget about later on in the game, which is a bit of a bummer and everything like that, but I always forget that it's got Remnant. It's just one of those things where it's like, it's one of the things you don't remember that has Remnant. Now, Cammy responds here to me recovering all my things, whatever, to Shining Strike my elf in order to rest it again, and he draws a card. So that way I cannot tap the elf for any will this turn, which is a bit of a shame. It's a bit of a shame, but it was a smart play in his move to try and stop me from getting all this will up. I'm contemplating here whether to tap for stone now or wait, because obviously you saw I very nearly flipped the card over, but I kind of like was hesitant a lot, so I wait for it. I pay 3 in order to play Pricia, the Pursuant of Exploding Flame, And then I decide to tap for a stone because it's kind of important where I want to be able to hit my resonance abilities. So I give the flying to Pricia because she already has swiftness. And I give the swiftness to Tama because, you know, I just need the swiftness to go somewhere else. Like, no point giving her swiftness twice, which is silly. I tap my last stone here to give rapid growth to Pricia to make her an 1100 and 800. So I'm swinging at Cammy for 11, and he takes it because he has no blockers and no way to stop me. Rapid growth obviously has Remnant as well, which is quite handy in particular. I also go to hit with Tama for 2, just because I can, and I can keep the last Tama up as a potential blocker if he drops something. But I believe none of Cammy's Resonators have swiftness, opposed to his J ruler, obviously, which with the Levitate out can gain swiftness, but with my death size still on the field, it cannot. But when he judgments, he basically wipes everything off my board, including the death size, so he can safely do that if he judgments. So he drops his own death size after calling a stone, and he's going to pass there. And I'm just joking there that it's quite a thrilling game here when he's literally played no Resonators and has really just called stones and kind of played a couple of spells thus far. But we're both like kind of getting into these decks and whatnot, so we're kind of trying to figure out what are the best plays and whatnot. Because by this point, obviously, Cammy's got Sol in his deck. I know from experience. He wants to ramp for some light stones or whatever, and he's also got some tricky things. Like he's got, I know he has Siegfried. He's got things like Snow White. I believe he has the Vengolf 3 Fairy in this build as well. But I'm guessing he's just not really hitting any Resonators that he really wants to use. So I'm paying 1 here to play another Sacred Elf, filling up my board potentially for Cammy to board wipe me when he judgments. I then go to pay 3 for Spinning Myths with Torrent. I remember the Torrent ability here, in particular because I paid the Elf first. I stick in Frigg so I can get back the Spinning Myths and my Windscled Refuge. Obviously I have no Resonators in my grave, so I can't get any Resonators back. I call the stone with the Torrent ability and give the Frigg, I believe, Flying and Swiftness for the potential to attack. I then tap the stone that I just called and use my my Energize here to play the Windscled Refuge in order to draw a card. And I believe this was the first instance of me forgetting to tap Pricia for a stone, because as you can see, she's still set up here, and Cammy responds to me going to attack with Pricia with an interdimensional escape, which means it will wipe my entire board save for 1 Resonator, which is bummer. And obviously I can't stop it with Windscled Refuge because it does not target, which is a real shame, because I lose my 2 elves, my Tama, and I choose to sack Frigg because I've gotten the most out of her. And Pricia is just better in this instance, so I go to attack with her, but he then responds with Zero's Magic Light. And I use my Refuge to protect Pricia there and attack for 7. And then I choose to pass here, and as you can see, my Pricia is still standing, and I am so forgetful here. But that's one of the reasons why I record this match, so that I would be able to look back and see my mistakes here and learn from them, because I do quite like this deck. So I do want to try and get better at using it. That's why I wanted to record this match, so that I'd be able to reflect on what mistakes I made and how I could improve with this deck. So Cammy's got all these stones here, and he's remnanting the Lumia's Judgment here to kill my Pricia. Now in this instance, I actually forget about Pricia's obviously trigger that when she hits grave, my opponent takes 500 damage. But as you'll see in a minute or two, that doesn't really matter for the course of this game in particular, but it is very important to try and remember all your triggers or whatever for your Resonators and for like things like your spells and everything like that. So he played an Amaterasu, and he now has 3 things on board, so now I can safely hit with Izanagi now that he has 3 items that I can take with him. So I play the Horn in order to hit the Torrent ability for Spinning Myths. So here I go to pay 3, and I Spinning Myths and Torrent it to get the stone, using Izanagi to target his Amaterasu, his Death Scythe, and his Levitate. So that will make Izanagi a 2-2, which, as you can see by Harry's life here, is enough to kill him when I get the swiftness from the Sylvia Stone, the Firestone here. So basically I can swing for game, because he's 2-2, and obviously Cammy is only at 800 life. So I swing there, but obviously mistakes were made in that game. Obviously, I forget the triggers or whatever for tapping Pricia for stone, and I forgot about Pricia's instant of dealing 500 damage there. So we go into game 2 here. I believe Cammy doesn't side anything, but we'll just double check here to make sure. He's like checking his deck there to see where all his Resonators were, and he did admit there they were pretty far down the deck, so he didn't have a very good shuffle there. And now we're just going to have a quick shuffle of the deck to try and kind of mix it up a little bit, because I was kind of half happy and half not too happy with how I was drawing there. As you can see, it took me a while to get Izanagi out, or even a myth out. I did have Spinning Myths in my hand, but I didn't really have a viable target for it, obviously, because Cammy wasn't really playing anything to the field. He played his Regalia and whatnot, but there's really not many targets. I'd prefer to use Izanagi when there's 3 targets and he can become a 2/2. But yeah, otherwise I would have preferred to use Ox King, but I obviously didn't draw Ox King in that game. So shuffle the cards and whatnot, shuffle my stones. Cammy's are all light stones, so I don't really tend to cut them when we know, but because I'm practicing for GP and everything like that, we will sometimes joke that, oh, I wonder what the stones are going to be and whether I should cut them. But obviously Cammy's is 20 light stones, so we're not too bothered about that. Because he lost there, he's choosing to go first again, so I'm getting my Energize back, which is kind of nice. I prefer Pricia going second for the Energize, because it's very good to get your myths out quicker. I'm putting back to the bottom of my deck here. Also, I just remembered that Cammy did not trigger his chance standby at all during that game, so I'm not quite sure which chance standby it is. He didn't tell me, I don't think, what it was. But apparently either he maybe forgot about it, or he didn't have a trigger for it to activate it and whatnot. I'm guessing it was potentially to do something with Resonators, since he didn't really have many Resonators out in field. He only played 1, I believe, in the entire game, which is kind of funny. So I call my stone, play a Sacred Elf in my turn. He called a stone in his turn, and that was basically all he did. So he goes to tap for a stone. He's got 2, and he gets Sol, which is what he was looking for in order to get that ramp before his light. So he gets a basic light stone. I go to the recover. Looking at my options here, I potentially have 3 well with Sacred Elf and my Energize. But obviously it's a little bit too early to be hitting in Izanagi's right now when there's only 1 target. So contemplating this, I tap my stone and use my Energize in order to play Windscled Refuge, so I can draw a card. So as you can see, between Windscled Refuge and that, I have plenty of ways of drawing. I tap for a stone, give the flying and the swiftness to the elf, though it doesn't matter really in the long scheme of things. Just thinking about my plays here, what I can do. I do believe I have a Tama in hand, so I tap a stone and play that Tama and draw a card. A lot of card draws going on here to try and steady up my hand for the next couple of turns, and just dig in a little bit deeper to see if I can get those myths that I'm really looking for. You can't really see my hand too well because of the glare from the light there, but I pass my turn there. Cammy goes to recover, and I believe he taps again for a stone. Obviously it's a light stone because we established it as a light stone deck, and he goes to actually swing with Sol. I block with Tama, not really caring too much because Tama's kind of done his use, and then he plays another Sol to ramp up again with light stones. Sol is actually just a 400/400 otherwise. He is a cost 2, but he's kind of good for those kind of stones, those kind of decks that only use light stones. My apologies. So I drop a Death's Aether. I think this is me preparing for my play of Spinning Myths, but I'm not too sure. I need to wait here and see what I actually do. But I have at least 2 stones up and the Sacred Elf. Contemplating whether I tap Pricia or not, but I do. I end up doing it. I get a Fire Magic Stone here. I wouldn't say a Sylvia Stone because Sylvia is obviously the artwork, but it's not. It's a basic Fire Stone. And because I don't have any other target, it goes to the Sacred Elf, but she doesn't really need it because obviously she's just going to be tapping for Will. Shuffling my hand about here, just trying to contemplate here, but I decide, you know what, it's safer just to not play anything. So I pass there, he recovers, he taps for another stone. Remembers to recover the last Sol there because he doesn't want to forget about that. He taps 5 in order to play a Wing Seraph, which I don't like the look of at all. So I tap a stone to play Wall of Wind, meaning he has to pay an extra 1 in order to play it, which he does. I tap another one to play another Wall of Wind. So he's absolutely out of will now, so that Seraph goes bye-bye, which is probably why I kept my will up, because obviously I was expecting a big play now that he's ramped up his stones, because he clearly wanted to get his stones there, but he swings for the 800, and I don't want to block with the elf, so I just take it once I figure out how to actually use the counter and whatnot. So then he passes his turn there, and it is my turn, so I'm on 3-2 and he's on 4,000 here. I recover all my things, get my stones up and everything like that. So he's got still 2 Resonators out on field. I still feel like it might not be enough to be worthwhile playing Izanagi. I tap 1 here to play another Sacred Elf to get a little bit more ramp, hopefully, potentially, in this game in particular. It's kind of, I managed to swerve there with the Winged Seraph, because obviously that is a scary play. I mean, it would have been nice to let it hit the field, but then he would have gotten 4 Resonators on the field, and he's like, I can only target 3, which would potentially give him a blocker. So I pass my turn there. He recovers, he taps for a stone. He now has, I believe, 6 light magic stones, which compared to what I've got right now, I mean, I do have technically 5 if you count my Sacred Elves. And obviously you can see here, I forgot to tap Pricia again. He calls another Sol and gets another stone, which is kind of scary. He goes to attack. I choose to block with 1 elf. And that's fine, my elf dies. But yeah, I was just saying to him there, I just realised that I have forgot to tap the Pricia, which is kind of a bummer. But you know what, I'm just going to just deal with it, because I'm trying to learn my best about this deck. I don't want to seem like too salty or whatever, but then yeah, I just realised there, yeah, it would have been better if I tapped Pricia the last turn, because I'm quite silly that way. But then I go to tap her and actually get my stone this time, and I get flying. The flying just goes to the elf, but it doesn't really matter because it's only going to be tapping for will anyway. I also just joked there that I had a pretty dire hand, and it wasn't going to be doing too well against his 3 Sols, and I passed there, which I believe means I don't have the Izanagi in my hand, which I probably would have played it that turn if I either had Izanagi or Spinning Myths, so I must be missing something in particular. So he quick cast Glorious before he recovered and whatnot. He then goes to Shining Strike my elf to arrest it, and he draws a card. All these plays happening so quickly here. So now he's got 4 Resonators up, which is pretty scary. He's got obviously the 3 Sols, and he's got his Glorious, which I believe he could potentially Judgment if he wanted, but he's swinging for the 4. He's swinging for 8 then with the next Sol. Swinging for 12, so I'm going quite down here, and then he swings with Glorious again. Well, he swings with Glorious for the first thing because it has Swiftness now, because he quick cast it before recovery and whatnot. So I'm sitting on 12. I think he's contemplating whether to Judgment or not, because he could potentially just drop a Leviton and hit me for game. And yep, he chooses to Judgment, which means I basically lose absolutely everything. I believe including my Death Scythe, if he reminds me there that I actually lose the Death Scythe. Yeah, that's him reminding me there that I lose the Regalia, and my Windscloud Refuge, which is a bummer. It's a total shame. And he drops Leviton in order to swing for game. So that's me lost that game in particular. So yeah, as I explained here, I have 3 Spinning Myths in hand and basically 2 Regalia, so I had no myth target, so that was my problem there. I had too many Spinning Myths and actually no myths in my hand, which was a bit of a shame. Now going into the third game of this matchup, whatever, the end of the footage actually cut out, so we don't actually have the full game here, but I will commentate over as much as the game is played, and I can tell you by the end whatever what happened and everything like that, because sadly my footage cut out at around 30 minutes, and I think our game ended up going on 50 minutes, which was a bit of a bummer, but I know how the game ended and whatnot, so I can tell you exactly what happened in the end, and hopefully give you some kind of resolution to this matchup here. So obviously I'm feeling a bit shaky and whatnot. I'm just like, oh, that was quite an intense play, whatever. He literally just rammed into me with all those Sols, and you know, the swing with the dragon and whatnot. So the dragon is pretty scary in that obviously when it enters it wipes the board, so even if you have a Death Scythe up, it's like, no, the dragon doesn't really care about it because he can get rid of that, which is kind of scary. And I'm surprised that a lot of people don't maybe play this ruler, because this ruler is actually kind of cool. I like how it's an entire board wipe, so it's just like, it doesn't matter about Regalia or additions and all that stuff, it's just like, it will wipe absolutely everything. And there's a lot of good light support to kind of like make sure that a mono light build is viable. So I lost there, so I chose to go second in particular to get my Energize, because Pricia, I feel, is better with Energize. I know some people like in the past would say, oh, going first would assure that you would win, but I feel like with Pricia, that Energize is very important. So I showed a little bit of my hand there, and you can see in the corner I had a Tama. So Tama is actually a good thing to see in the first hand. I put back to one of them being the Ox King, I believe. I don't have my Spinning Myths yet, so that's why I put it back. And Cammy is just checking there. He is putting back, I believe he put back 5 there, I think. Or whether that's his first hand or not. I believe that's his first, no, that's his mulligan, I believe. In order to check his hand and whatnot. So yeah, Cammy is good to go, I believe, there, and he is going first. He is tapping for a stone to get his light magic stone, and he's just adjusting his light stone deck there so it's easier for him to call. He puts down a horn, very interesting there, and then passes to me. I go to tap for a stone, call it a blasting waves, fix my little dice there, tap to play that Tama in order to draw a card. Usually my turn 1 is either going to be Tama or Sacred Elf, unless I obviously call my Firestone. In that case, I can't play them. Otherwise, I would maybe play Gwyn, which I actually haven't played any Gwyns in this matchup, I just realised. He pays 2 to get a Sol to ramp for a Lightstone and passes to me. So the ramp has already begun with the Sols. I'm hoping that he doesn't have any more in his deck, well, any more in his hand, rather. I give the flying to Tama from calling that Wind Magic Stone. Pay a 1 for my Blasting Waves, and there's the Gwyn there. So I do actually run Gwyn in this deck, if you remember from my deck profile last week. But I just haven't been drawing her in these matchups. But I finally got her. I pay a green in order to get my Sacred Elf. And just reminding myself that when Gwyn enters the field, she can't tap for her ability to sack something and draw 2 cards, discard 1. So I swing with Tama for 2. He decides not to block it. He probably figures that he doesn't really want to bother blocking it or whatever. He could have killed the Tama if he blocked with Sol, but I guess he just wanted to leave it where it was. He calls a stone. So now he's sitting pretty with all these stones that he's ramped up. And I only have 2, my Sacred Elf and my Energize. And he is currently sitting on 3,800 and I'm on 4,000. He goes to swing with Sol for 400. And I decide to take it there because I can't block with Tama. I'd rather keep the Sacred Elf and I don't want to lose Gwyn because I need to get that in play. He actually plays an Arla, which is actually quite interesting, obviously, because Arla is a pretty good target for Seraph. At his end of turn there, I activate Gwyn's ability to sack the Tama here to draw 2 cards and discard 1, put 1 into my hand. I don't really play Gwyn very often in my red decks, which is why I was like, which order of this does it go, so I don't make mistakes. Obviously, if you do something wrong, you can easily get DQ'd for it, so I need to remind myself how the trigger actually works. I discard a Rapid Growth there, because Rapid Growth obviously has Remnant, so I'm not too bothered about losing it, because I know I can just remove it from my graveyard in order to get its effect again, if I so want to. And then I choose to drop an Apollo. 0 cost, of course, which is very, very nice. I tap my Elf and tap for 2 to Spinning Myths with Torn in order to get a stone. I pick Izanagi because I have 3 targets here. I have the Arla, I have Sol, and I have the Horn, which is very nice, and it will put Izanagi up to 2/2, which is very, very nice. He's contemplating whether he can do something with this. So he banishes the Horn in response so that he doesn't need to lose the Horn. He obviously has no target in the grave to shuffle into his deck, but he can still target, I believe, because, you know, it's still his graveyard. So I only managed to get 2 things for Izanagi. So he's sitting at 17-17. I tap the stone to get a Tama to draw a card. I gave the Swiftness to Izanagi, of course. I double check here to see how much he is. So he's 17-17 when he hits here. And he has to take that because Cammy has no blockers here. And I fiddle around with the counter. I also then pass there, forgetting to tap Pricia. As you can see, she's still standing up with her Energize on her. So that's kind of the thing which I want to try and avoid doing as I continue to practice this deck, is remember to actually tap my Pricia for the Magic Stone. And he Lumia's Judgment here, which really hurts. And obviously he's targeting Izanagi with it. In response, I'm tapping and banishing my Apollo to bring Izanagi back to hand. Cammy just wants to double check how that works there, because obviously it's not an interaction you really see a lot. But with returning Izanagi to hand, he gets his Sol and his Arla back to his hand, which is a little bit bummer, because then that means that he can just play the Sol again and get a bit more ramp. But at the same time, I'm saving my Izanagi from being destroyed because it is one of my main hitters, so I don't want to lose that so easily. So he decides to play the Sol again in order to ramp and, you know, give himself more opportunity to get more stones. And he decides to end there. And on his end, I decide to tap the Gwyn to sack Tama in order to activate her ability, draw 2, to discard 1, and keep 1. Looking at my hand here, contemplating what I want to keep. I get rid of Sacred Elf because I've already got 1 in the field, so I feel like I don't really need much more ramp. I believe I still have another Spinning Myths potentially in hand, although I'm not too sure. I could just potentially just have the Izanagi back and I don't have a Spinning Myths, but with me running 4 of them in my deck, I can easily get it back if I so choose to. Usually because I might draw it or whatever. Thinking about my play here, I pay 3 and tap for Elf and my Energize and whatever. to play Frigg, and that way I can get some cards back. And I believe I am choosing the Spinning Myths. I'm choosing Tama, and for a spell, no, I don't choose a spell. Oh no, wait, this Spinning Myths is a spell. My apologies. For a minute there, I thought Spinning Myths was an addition, because obviously Frigg brings back an addition, a chant, and a resonator. So I get my 2 options back, and with Frigg I give her the flying and the swiftness when that stone enters that field, and he has to take the 800. I then use my last stone in order to play a Tama and draw a card, get my hand back up there. I also remember to actually tap Pricia for stone this turn, which is very nice. Makes me feel good about myself when I look back at this footage. Cammy then goes to recover all his items. He could very easily Judgment if he so wanted to and clear my entire board, which would be very hurtful, and it would hurt me quite a lot. But he's obviously thinking about it there, because I can see him touching the stones there, contemplating whether to just scoop up 5 and just slap the dragon onto the board. But I think he's actually thinking whether or not just to play Arla again, or whether to just keep it in the hand, because I think he knows with me getting Spinning Myths back, I could potentially just play Izanagi, and he would prefer to Judgment when I have Izanagi on board so he can kill it, and then he can get his cards back if he plays anything and whatnot. So he's just sat there, he's thinking about it. We're both looking at each other like this is a bit of a standoff here. He's at 1300 and I'm at 3600. He's also saying to me right now whether he actually wants to make a greedy play, which obviously I'm not quite sure what his greedy play is, or whether he's wanting to play the smart play in particular. So trying to work out his thought process here as to what he considered to be his greedy play and what he considered to be the smarter move. I believe the smarter move would be waiting until I play Izanagi before he Judgments. So he swings with Soul just for 400. I decide to block with Tama because I don't want to take that 400 damage. He goes to tap 5 on Judgment, which is super duper scary, and I lose basically all my cards. But I managed to get 1 block off there, and he loses the Salt as well, because it also wipes his board, which is a bit of a counter action, but to be honest, he can, with Ramp, he can easily just play stuff after the Judgment in order to build up his field presence once more after the dragon hits. So I recover all my stones and whatnot. We're hitting about maybe 27 minutes, so there's not left of this footage left, but I will explain obviously near the end what happens after the footage actually cuts off, whatever, because sadly didn't record the entirety of this match, but I do remember exactly how it went down, and I made a couple of misplays and whatnot in regards to the end of this match. So I drop a horn, which basically is a 0 cost, meaning I can torrent the Spinning Myths that I now have in my hand, which he knows this because he knows that I choose to banish the horn in order to shuffle my graveyard into my deck, because there's a lot of things in that graveyard that I'd rather have back into my deck and whatnot, and I'm just thinking about whether or not that will maybe help me if I shuffle the deck and whatnot and I can draw something a little bit better. With that action done, I am safe to pay 3 and play Spinning Myths with my torrent to get my stone, and I believe I chose Izanagi. He has no target, sadly, because obviously Cammy only has the dragon up. If you could actually take your J ruler of your opponent, that would be actually pretty scary and funny, but obviously I doubt they would ever do something like that. So Izanagi only has 1100 here, and I pay 1 for the elf. Pretty sure I gave the swiftness and the flying to Izanagi there when my stone came in, but I dropped the Apollo here, which I think helps me out. But thinking about it, not the smartest move, because I forgot obviously that Cammy's dragon, being a dragon, actually flies, and the dragon has 1200 defense, so sadly I cannot kill it with Izanagi as he is. So yeah, we both have a stalemate here, and with my Izanagi tapped out, Cammy has the ample opportunity to just fly over me here and smack me in the face. Obviously, if he manages to drop a Leviathan, then he can boost up the dragon to attack for 1200 damage and whatnot. So he has all this well up, and it's just kind of scary trying to think of what he could potentially do. And again, I tell him there, I was a bit of an idiot and forgot to tap Pricia for a stone. Very silly, but he actually plays a Snow White here. I like Snow White. It's one of those resonators that I actually forget exists a lot because I don't have many copies of her. So she enters, she gets 12/12 because of all the light magic stones that Cammy actually has. which is kind of scary, but the Snow White doesn't have swiftness, unlike this dragon here, who can now tap, and well, this Leviton can tap and give him 200 damage, and he can swing for 12, which is super duper scary. And I'm explaining to Cammy there that Izanagi no longer has flying because my resonance effect only happens until end of turn. He actually chooses to pass, which I think he's planning to do so because he's expecting me to give Izanagi flying again. I actually choose to tap and bring Izanagi back to hand. And I did have a reasoning behind this, which actually makes for a interesting play here. As we are nearing the end of the footage, because we are running out here, I tap the one to play Gwyn. And as it goes on to the next turn I go, I pay my 3 for Spinning Myths again to Torrent, get Izanagi out to target the Snow White and the Leviton, and get my stone, giving the swiftness and flying to Izanagi. Now, I go to target the Leviton and the Snow White, of course. So what he does in response is that he obviously he chooses to tap the Leviton to sack Snow White, so that I can't pick her, obviously, to banish a Resonator for Snow White as I play the Izanagi to recover the Leviton, and it is quite a complicated one. So going over the thought process behind this here is that he would tap Leviton to give the dragon 2/2. He would then sack Snow White with the Leviton's ability in order to recover the Leviton and tap it again. But I believe by the end of that game, we actually got a ruling from our friend who's sat at the table next to us, is that I would still technically get the Leviton. I would just not get Snow White in particular, so Izanagi would get it. But in the end of the game, he basically managed to fly over me several times with that, because obviously his dragon was stronger than the Izanagi, and he just hit me for face on and on and on. And then I believe he also Shining Striked the Izanagi at one point, so I lost it, and he hit me for face for game. But that was this match, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Sorry that the footage cut out at the end there, and you didn't manage to see the resolution of that game, but Cammy did win that last game, so good on him for doing that. And yeah, we did learn a lot of things from this game. Obviously, I learned to try and remember to tap Pricia and not get too caught up in trying to torrent Spinning Myths. And then Cammy also remembered that his dragon has a resonance ability, and that he should probably remember that if he's planning to play this deck competitively again, because he was playing Mikage at GP as opposed to the light dragon that he's built now. And he's sadly not coming to GP with us, but he's still getting the practice and whatnot, hopefully for the future and everything like that. So I hope you guys enjoyed this match. I hope you had a little bit of a laugh also at some of our misplays and whatnot, but I feel like recording these misplays will help us learn in the long run and let us see our mistakes so we can get better at our decks. So I hope you enjoyed this match, as fun and as silly as it was. Until next time, guys, I will see you all later.